All
How's
right.
that? How's that for everybody? I know there are a few people, well, not a few people, quite a few people joining late. They might be a little confused on like what the heck's going on. So how'd it go
Yeah.
in your group?
So awesome. Yeah. Thanks for sticking around, guys. Let's go ahead and get into our presentations here. Can you mute that? So sorry. Darren, I'm going to have you go ahead and kick us off.
All right. Well, I've learned a couple things already. I've done more Zooms than I can count, but I've never done the individual groups. So thanks for showing me how to do that. That was kind of fun.
Yeah,
And
awesome.
nice to meet the group that I was in and kind of learn a little bit about everybody and their dislike of candy corn. But as Ryan said, I am an insurance broker by day. That's my 9 to 5, or however the W-2 job. And my journey into real estate basically came from that. I had a customer that was a real estate investor, and I think he basically stayed up too late watching TV and saw the Carlton sheets. I'll show you how to buy money or property with no money down, kind of thing. And because he would call me, and a week or so later he'd call me again because he had another property, and each time I'd go out, and these were like just really horrible properties. But as I got to know him, he was explaining how he had was making money. He was making 100 here, 100 there, a couple hundred there. And at the time, all I wanted was a new car. And I could see that if I had 3 properties that were cash flowing $100 each, that I could have enough for a new car payment. That was literally the extent of my thinking. And anyway, I made the mistake of saying to him in the driveway of one of these turd properties that, man, I need to get into this. And he said, I'll sell you this one. And I was like, this one, this is pretty bad, and anyway, he got, he offered it to me at a certain price. And I worked all weekend long trying to figure out how to make the numbers work. And the only thing that stuck out of my mind was that he said that he really needed $10,000 cash so he could go buy the next property he wanted to buy. And so I thought about that, and I backed into the property with $10,000 and brought his offer price down to a price that worked for me. And I presented it to him. He said, okay. And so I got into real estate. And then I found out that, buying a rough property, is, I mean, trying to attract a good tenant with a rough property is not exactly easy. And that property management was getting paid and I wasn't. And, but 7 months later, I had another client that wanted to get in real estate, and I offered him mine, and accidentally I did a flip. I mean, I didn't know that, but at the time I made, I think it was like about it was more than $20,000 in 7 months for doing essentially nothing. And I was like, wow, this is cool. Just how the flow of real estate and the ability to, there's an ask and an offer, and where the buyer and seller meet is the price. And so my initial thought with real estate was more about, I was looking for $100 a month cash flow per door. And I had in the back of my mind, I had a 401k at work, and I realized that I was the guy putting the money into the 401k. And I saw that if the tenant paid the rent every month and they paid down my principal, I would have essentially another 401k. I looked at, that was kind of the extent of my understanding of how real estate worked. And like I mentioned to the group in the breakout, that my wife and I, we started there, and once every 3 or 4 years, we would buy another property. And we've been buy and hold since that first one I sold. And right now we've got 6 single family properties in Oregon. And 4 years ago in 2016, we bought our first 12 unit property. It's down in Florida. And it was not until I guess it'd be like the fifth, or I guess the fourth property we bought that I actually had one that cash flowed. And that was when I learned about cash flow. Um, I guess I understood a little bit about depreciation at, when I went to do taxes. I always knew that I was getting money back rather than having to pay, which was cool. And then along the way, I learned about refinance and, just how to make them cash flow better. And kind of what I tell you this just to kind of give you, the background, because when we bought our 12 unit property, I was already doing my podcast that Ryan mentioned, Commercial Real Estate Pro Network. I started to understand more about people that do syndications, but having been a investor and in control as opposed to being passive in somebody else's deal, I didn't quite, it didn't always connect with me, because I always saw real estate as a long-term play, not as a get in, then get out kind of thing, like stocks. But I've come around to that from the standpoint of getting in or doing more like a syndication, where if you go raise capital, you invest, you get the benefits of real estate, and you get a positive return, it works, especially if you're in and out fast. But again, my brain was kind of tied to that, the long term of the loan and getting the principal paid down to zero, and that was kind of like a slow shift for me. But so anyway, we bought our first 12 unit property. It was I don't know if how familiar you are with Florida, but it's on the East Coast. They call it the Space Coast, down around Melbourne. And the issue that I wanted to at least share with you guys is more about due diligence. I ran all the numbers backwards and forwards, and I had my little spreadsheet where I went in and I would look at the rents, and I recognized that the rents were really low compared to what the market was. I thought, okay, there's an opportunity. I recognized that the expenses were really high compared to what they should be. The seller was paying for cable TV. He was paying for water. And I thought immediately, okay, if I get rid of the cable, because none of the competition's providing, cable TV, I don't need to do that. If I start charging for water, doing the rubs, we could offset some of our expenses. And right there, that was going to create some positive cash flow. And I hadn't even raised the rent yet, right? And in my mind, I thought we could also do just some very basic, like paint and, turn the units just with some paint and get more for rent. What I learned was that in order to get the top rents, you really need to go through and make it current comparative to like what the newer, nicer properties are. So we've since changed our turn model from just paint and carpet to we've been putting in new kitchens and new baths. This property is all 1 bed, 1 bath units and stuff. But the due diligence that I mentioned, like I said, I ran all the numbers, and I realized that even if I made a mistake, there was room in this property to make a mistake. It wasn't gonna be something that was a showstopper and put me out if we weren't able to make it work. And what I learned was the real the necessity to really do a full system inspection. And in insurance, we're constantly looking at systems. There's 4 questions that every insurance agent always has to ask in order to get a quote. And it's about the age of the systems. And the systems are roof, heating, electric, plumbing. Those are the systems that the insurance companies know they wear out. And if they're not upgraded, that there's going to be a problem. I think everybody understands roofs because you have a leak if it doesn't work properly. And life of a roof somewhere between 20 and 30. I've seen them go as many as 40 years if they're well cared for. This property had a new roof on it. It had copper supply lines for the plumbing, which I thought that's great. And I had a plumber run a camera down through the waste lines. Okay. What I didn't do was have them inspect the lateral arms between like the sink and the stack, or so on and so forth. And the plumber I used did not have the ability to record the video. So I was basically, he went and he went down one stack and he ran it out the street and said, "No, you got Polly going out to the street." And in a number of my other properties, I've already had to replace. I've done it both ways. I've dug up the yard, made a mess to replace the drain line, or I've had them what they call burst the pipe, where they come in from the inside and they just pull a new pipe through. If you've got terracotta, you can do that. Anyway, they're always fairly costly, but not, again, a showstopper. But if you have multiple stacks and you have multiple waste lines and you have to rip up a parking lot and you have these other things, it can add up a lot. It can add up very fast in a multifamily property. And so, due diligence, I had a new roof, I had circuit breakers, all the electricals and conduit. I had copper supply lines in my, in the property, and I had the waistline scoped. And heating and air conditioning in Florida is basically these are like window units in the property. So I mean, there's not much to inspect. They either work or they don't, and if they don't work, you pull one out and put a new one in for $500. Right away, we started having plumbing problems, whether it be like drains not draining, or I can't remember if we had any like a real leak situation, but it became very clear to me that it was more of the drain stuff. And I've since my plumber has I've become intimately familiar with my plumber. We almost like speed dial. I feel like sometimes I'm a plumbing apprentice, based on all of the lessons I've learned. But the one takeaway that my plumber suggested that I could have done that would have opened my eyes to the potential problems that I faced was, if when when inspecting the property, have all of the water appliances turned on at the same time, and just to see if water comes out of any place that it shouldn't, And I thought, wow, that would have been real easy, because here, I was expecting the camera and all that stuff. But if you just gone and turned on the kitchen sink, the bathroom sink, the tub, and flush the toilet, a couple times, and if all of a sudden you see water coming out of certain areas that it shouldn't, it would have been telling and given you a clue on where you need to look for more potential problems. And that's the one thing that I look at. I also understand more now about the importance of really having a budget or I guess back up. When you're in the due diligence period, that's the opportunity to really come with any numbers, and whether it be quote retrade or just to make the numbers work right for you, that's your chance. And I probably blew a chance to work on the price a little bit. A lot of the expenses we've had have been more about doing the upgrades to the kitchens and baths, which there's not really any way around that. But that's probably when I say share the horror story, was what I was trying to go for here, was just the plumbing. We've got 7 of our 12 units we've upgraded, and I've made it a habit now. If we open a wall, we replace whatever's inside it. I don't want to come back and have to do it again.
Yeah.
But,
Yeah. So basically, Darren, I think what we're getting from this is make sure you check the systems. of the building, the bones of the building before you get into an investment. Is that kind of the big takeaway here?
Bones, and then also make sure you've got a budget so you can, you're not. I was trying to do it also out of cash flow, so that was the other thing. So that
Yeah.
inspection, due diligence, and then also have your funds capital so you can make the improvements you need.
Yeah. Okay. Awesome. Yeah. Super important. Yeah. So questions, guys, if you got questions, go ahead and type them in the chat, and then we'll do a Q&A after everybody's had their presentation. But so Darren, I'm gonna hand this off now to James Tran to share his, so we stay kind of on time here.
Hi everyone. So my name is James. This is Leonie, my wife, and we're co-hosts of the Pasadena chapter of MFM. I'm a commercial real estate appraiser and real estate broker, and Leonie is the real estate agent as well. So, jumping into our story or our investments and what we learned, ours has to do with tenant base, and really knowing your tenant base and what you're getting into when you buy a property. So we purchased this 70 unit portfolio in Columbus, Ohio, and everything was going well the first 6 months or so. Then we started getting letters from the Columbus Police Department. These letters were pertaining to drugs and prostitution, illegal activity at the property. We thought, cool, we forwarded these letters to our property manager. We're like, hey, can you figure out what's going on and handle it? Sure, yeah. Our manager said, yeah, we'll take care of it, no problem. And again, another letter would come, another letter would come. They're like, what's going on? So we eventually flew into town, just to see for ourselves. Me and my partner, I think Leonie stayed back on this trip. So, we wanted to see what particularly we wanted to see if there's, really this prostitution going on. I guess it's one thing we could kind of see. So we were in a rental car. We decided to visit the property at 11:30 at night. So we drove over to the parking lot of one of the buildings. It's a four property portfolio all along the same street. So we parked in the back, and this is what our manager told us to do. Just park in the back, wait 30 minutes, and you'll see. So we went there at 11:30 p.m. at night. Just two Asian dudes. Like we stuck out like a sore thumb. We parked in the back parking lot, and lo and behold, I'm in the driver's seat. My partner is in the passenger seat. Some kind lady walks up to the passenger door and knocks on the window. And he rolls the window down a crack, and she's, the lady goes, "Hey, are you looking for Brooke?" And I'm like, I respond. My partner is just kind of frozen. I'm like, no, we're not looking for Brooke. Just hanging out. And she's like, okay, cool. And she walks back into the building, and then a few minutes later, she comes back out and comes to the driver's side window and knocks on my window instead. And she's like, I reckon you guys aren't from around here. And she's like, do you know where you are? I'm like, no, where are we? We're at our apartment building. So, no, where are we? And she's like, you're in New Jack City. I'm like, oh, cool. I didn't know how to respond to that. She's like, you're in New Jack City, and her head is all swiveling like that. I'm like, okay, cool. And she's like, I suggest you guys get, if you guys got no business around here, you guys should get out of here, for your own safety, because you're getting everyone all riled up around here. I'm like, oh, okay, cool, thanks. So we just roll up the window, and she walks back to the building, and I see the door open. Some gentleman opens the door for her. This guy, this really big gentleman in a tank top, and kind of staring at us. I think that was the pimp. So that's one story about our tenant base there, and how did we handle that? This went on for a little bit, a few months, and it's our first time dealing, well, not the first time actually. Actually, I have another story of the first fourplex I bought.
There you go.
But yeah, so we handled this by, we kept getting letters from the police department, so we decided to visit the. No.
We realized that it was the property manager who was putting these tenants in and doing what we call churning tenants, meaning they would put in bad tenants and then collect the new lease fee, kick them out, collect the eviction and court fees, then release them back up with more bad tenants. And so we realized that we had to get rid of our property manager. And that's when things started turning around and for the better. So then we decided to get a new property management company with the understanding like, hey, these are the problems, we need to fix it, let's get rid of it. And then we went to the police department.
Yeah, so we actually went to the police department in Columbus, and we met with the sheriff there, and basically came up with a plan together, because they were sending us letters threatening to board up the building. The letters were getting more and more intense as they came. So we gave them our, they asked for our rent roll. We gave them our rent roll so they can stop people that were walking into the building and really see if they were a tenant in the building. So that helped. And
a few months later, we got a thank you letter.
That's right.
From the police department, and everything was cleared up. So, I mean, it's fixable, but it just would have been a lot less annoying had we checked the tenant base a little bit earlier, driven by at night before purchasing, and like sitting out for 30 minutes, just seeing who comes in and out, like that kind of stuff. That really helps before purchasing a property.
Yeah, and we probably could have taken care of that issue a lot earlier before it kind of got worse. So that's another lesson that I personally learned.
Yeah. Hey. So James and Leonie. So property management seems like a pretty big standout here. So what would you say? I know you guys gotta run here shortly, so I do want to get one question in. When you're vetting your property managers, what's maybe the one or two most important questions or aspects that you're looking for?
One thing I would say is before signing the management agreement, read through and see if they're willing to work with you on the terms of the agreement. And so this first property management company had the new lease fee and all that. So it almost incentivized them to put as many bad tenants as they can, because then they'll always collect new lease fees. They don't care who stays. They're going to get paid even more. The worse the property is almost. Whereas the new property management company, we were able to negotiate with them and say like, hey, we're not going to do a new lease fee. Well, they were pretty understanding. They didn't want to do a new lease fee anyways. But we made sure like, hey, that's not the route that we want to go. And we'll do something else, like put like a set price per unit on top of like the percentage of gross income.
Yeah, so really, take a look at how the property management contract is structured. I think this company that we were with, they had a low percentage. Most property managers will have that percentage of collected income as a base. So it was a low percentage, which was attractive, but they collected. They made it up with the late fees, the eviction court fees, and late fees.
Yeah.
Also,
all these fees, all these extra hidden fees.
Jason here, I have a quick question.
Sure.
So for that new management company you guys end up switching over, did they have an incentive, or like speaking of aligning the incentives, right? Do they maybe have a fee or some kind of bonus for renewal, or do you maybe recommend, or how do you guys think about for the PMs to get a fee for renewal, or encouraging them to vet and get longer term tenants?
No, for
Yeah.
one of them we do. Oh, actually, one thing we actually have two property management companies now for those 70 units. We did that to make kind of like a competition between the two, so they know like at any moment we can switch to the other one if one's not doing well. So one has a renewal and the other one has collects renewal fees and the other one doesn't. I don't really see any difference in terms of incentives. Yeah, they're both doing relatively the same. Yeah. Yes. So I hope that's not a definite answer to your question, but honestly, I don't see a difference. I don't know if anyone else has. Bethany, Powell, do you guys do your management companies do renewal fees?
No.
Mine used to. The one I have right now does not, though. So they don't do any renewal fees for me, but the ones that I've had in the past do.
Do you see a difference in performance or aligning the incentives better?
Are you asking me or are you
Yes,
asking
yes,
somebody else?
yeah,
Okay.
you, yeah.
Or Spider-Man.
It's hard to say right now. This property manager that I hired it's probably only 3 months in, and they haven't renewed anybody yet. So I can't really say.
Okay.
Yeah. Hire slow, fire fast, right?
Yeah. So that's big lesson.
Big takeaway.
Big takeaway. Hire slow with your management and fire fast. As when you start seeing red flags, like just don't even give the benefit of doubt. Just next.
Yeah. I don't want to take too much time away from Jason here. I'm sure he has some great stories coming up.
So those are our lessons. Thanks for listening to Superwoman and Spider-Man. Okay.
James and Leona, we've got one more question. I just want to ask because I know you guys are getting ready to run.
Yeah, sure.
What is the percentage of rent you pay your property manager?
We pay 6% and then we pay like $45 per unit. So it's like two different ways. I mean, like both.
Yeah, one's 6% plus the $45 per unit, and I think the others, I think other one might be 7%, a little bit more with various fees. But we gave them a smaller building just to try them out, and they both worked out pretty well. So we're happy that we did the split. It's a lot more work on Leonie though, because she's kind of compiling all the statements every month from both management companies into one P&L.
Cool. Well, thank you, Spider-Man and Superwoman.
You're welcome.
And we won the costume contest, did we?
Apparently.
No, I saw another costume earlier.
We have
Lakey has one.
He's a unicorn. That one's cute.
And then there's an invisible man here somewhere.
Where there's
a lot of it.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Oh my God.
Sorry. Okay, James and Leonie have no longer won the costume contest.
I know. That's okay. It's a good one.
30-minute coaching for you.
Yeah. Milo.
All right, Jason, take it away.
All right. So for some of you that joined late, my name is Jason Shao. I lead the San Jose chapter. So I started investing kind of, the typical story. I read Rich Dad Poor Dad. And then I started house hacking when I was in college before the term was coined by Bigger Pockets. Essentially, my sister and I, we overlapped 2 years, but my first years I was in the dorm. So I told my dad, hey, why don't you buy a 2-bedroom condo? My second year, my sister's last year, we can both live in it. After she graduates, I'm going to rent this other room out to my friends and pay you back your interest, cover the expenses, and whatever left over is my beer money. And that's essentially how I got started. And then I was trying to check the timeline. I think around 2016 is when I first kind of got exposed to multifamily investing. And a friend of mine, he's in the Atlanta area. And he, just slowly and surely, little by little, started doing 4-plex, 8-plex, 16. And he was scaling up his investment portfolio and started syndicating. And he was the first one that I first learned about what a difference, GP, LP syndication and how, 8% pref, all these things mean. And, it sounded pretty cool. He's out in the Atlanta area. I did some research. There's a 32 or maybe 33 door unit. It's out in Smyrna, if any of you are in the Atlanta area. And it's pretty good market. It's pretty close to the new Brave Stadium that's gonna go in there as well. So this is my first deal ever. And I know a fair amount, but there's a lot I didn't know, and mainly, I invested because this guy I went to college with, I trusted him, and it seems like he has a good track record. And meanwhile, I told my dad about it, and he's like, literally the first thing he says, "How do you know this is not a Ponzi scheme?" And I didn't know. I was like, "Well, it's a good point. I don't." And I invested an amount that tomorrow, if I wake up and disappears, I'm probably okay still. But basically, for this one, the value add, once we got into it, we started, fixing up places, etc. The county inspector came in and basically just told us to fix up way more stuff than we were initially budgeting. And, we were supposed to cash flow from day one, but it didn't happen. We didn't see cash flow for like the 2 years that we were holding it. And to my friend's credit, I'm sure he put up some money. I don't know how much himself to avoid doing a capital call. But a year and a half, 2 years later, so we did what we were supposed to do. And even though it was way over budget, we sold it, and everybody still kind of doubled their money, so to speak. It worked out in the end, but I think that for me, the lesson here is, there's a lot of local knowledge that's required, and knowing kind of some of the building code, or just, it can be very tricky or crapshoot sometimes with inspectors, but having those knowledge, knowing like what can potentially trigger way more rework of wiring. I'm not suggesting people don't do this don't do their rehabs without permits either, but just really knowing the local vibe. And sorry, give me and knowing the sponsor, and knowing that they're of high integrity, and they're gonna do what they they're gonna do do the right thing, and either return of your capital or return on your capital. So
I have a question.
yeah.
Since you did end up doubling your money, would you still do it again? If you had to go back in time, would you do it again?
Yeah, so I didn't do any work, right? Like give me a second. We knew what was going on, and I asked a couple questions, but it got to a point too where I just didn't want to bother or pester him. I was like, okay, well, I'm just gonna. I don't have a choice. I have to trust you, and let's hope this works out. Would I do it again? I would say so. Even though it's the first one, it's not probably what I wish for anybody for a first deal. But I think having that experience and the knowledge to gain from it, that I was able to look at deals better or ask better questions for the second and third syndications that I end up investing in. Right?
Nice. What are some of those questions?
There's a whole list of things. Obviously, you want to check. I don't know how much time we have, but I would just say I don't get a referral fee or anything like that, but this book, go get it. Brian Burke, the hands-off investor.
A great book.
Yeah, I've met him. If he wasn't focused in the Atlanta area, I probably would have invested with him. I wanted to diversify, but there's a whole litany of things to check, right? Like checking if their financial statements make sense, if their rent projection makes sense, if their expense ratios make sense, and we can do all the due diligence in the world. I think there's still just sometimes things that are unexpected. They're there's just always surprises, but you want to know or need to know the person has that testicular fortitude to stick it out and do what needs to be done, whether it's swapping out all your wirings or swapping out your property management or build a team to actually manage it themselves. I think those are the two aspects I hope people take away from it.
You got some great education out of it as well.
Yeah, I mean, it worked out in the end, but I think he probably could have done a capital call, but I think that's the right thing to do for a sponsor when those kind of things happen. It's like, well, you have to look out for your investors first and foremost.
Statistic. Well, it's not just that, it's also having the financial background backing to be able to do that.
Mm-hmm.
Not even if you have a sponsor that wants to do the best for their team and their investors, do they have the financials? Are they liquid enough to do that? And that's a point. Sometimes people ask me if I invest in every one of my investments, and my statement a lot of times is I keep enough liquidity to help any one of my investments. So if I put money into every single investment, I may not have the liquidity to help one of the investments that need help. So you just, be thinking about that when you're looking at your deal sponsor. What kind of bank account do they have available? And a lot of people say they wouldn't invest in an investment unless the sponsor puts in skin in the game. But then again, having the skin available in case it's needed is also, I think, a valid point.
What's next, Brian?
Thanks, Jeff. So I do want to just kind of open it up to questions. Jason, unless you have anything else to add, Jason, to your
no, I mean, if there are other questions related to this particular specific deal, I'm happy to answer it, or we can open up for general questions.
One question for Jason on the developer side. So what would you say is the biggest risk in doing a development?
Biggest risk, entitlement risk. I mean, there's kind of the big chunks is your the entitlement risk, your financing, and I would say your actual execution or building, the managing the costs and all that. But the biggest one is like if you're, and a lot of this can be easily addressed. Usually you have due diligence. Sometimes depending on the property, and the seller's understanding, you can get a lot of time into it. But if you understand the zoning, if you need to check with the planning department to say, hey, this is what we're planning to build, we're planning to build 3-story buildings, and the city was like, no, we don't allow 3-story buildings like that, you would definitely shoot yourself in the foot, right? Like, so.
Awesome. Okay. Well, yeah, I think, let's go ahead and open it up for questions for the next few minutes, and then we'll do another breakout, get you guys kind of chatting with each other and what you learned, and share some of your own stories. One question I got for Darren. So Darren, for insurance due diligence purposes, is there anything that would make a building just completely uninsurable? So something like maybe aluminum wiring, and what would be like kind of the remediation process, or something that would bring it to a level where you can get that building insured?
Well, the answer is, for a price, you can insure anything. It's just a matter of the price that you want to pay. We do have some companies that, I mean, I can get aluminum wiring done. Typically, though, that most companies are looking for that it's been remediated, pigtailed. But yeah, I think the short answer is you can insure anything. It's whether or not you want to pay the price. So I think you're probably better off knowing going in what the price of the remediation is, so you can use that as a negotiation tool, or at least not let it be a surprise to you when it's your property and now all of a sudden the insurance company is threatening to cancel your insurance because certain things aren't done.
Okay. And I guess follow up to that, what are some other items that would increase your insurance quote?
Well, age of the property, and I'm assuming, if most of you and myself included, if we're doing value add, we're typically starting with an older property to begin with. And just as a line of suspicion that the insurance companies have, if it's more than 30 years old, they're going to start looking more, they're going to be looking for more updates. I think roofs are not out of the ordinary. That's pretty common, but I've got some companies that will go as much as 50 years on electric and plumbing, but then I've got some companies, if it's older than 30 years and it hasn't been taken down to the studs, they don't want to play, and I'm like, well, okay. But again, those 4 systems, and then basically, if the property has pride of ownership, if you have an older property that's been well taken care of, you can get insurance for it. That's not a problem. If it's got pride of ownership, any kind of maintenance records. I mean, if the property's changed hands multiple times, it's kind of hard to tell, when things may have been done. But if you've got pride of ownership and it looks nice, and you can, an inspection a good inspection can provide, details of what the systems are, when they were inspected, if they've been maintained, if you've got any kind of inspection report, those can usually make up for some of that. But I would encourage you, if you are dealing with older properties, try and work with a broker that deals with multiple companies, because a lot of times, like your direct writer companies, they're limited. So does that help?
Definitely, yeah.
I have a question, Darren. So, imagine not your personal investment or your deals, but since you are in the insurance field, what is the worst natural disaster or case you've come across, and what ended up happening to it?
Well, I mean, when you say disaster, I mean, I think that flood is probably the thing that I would warn anybody against. I know I've seen numerous buyers be surprised at the closing table only to find out that they've got the bank's asking them for their flood insurance. And, it's whether the buyer or the buyer's agent or the seller's agent, somebody should have uncovered that, before you get to the closing table. So I would say flood is one of the biggest things. What's interesting is each region kind of has its own things. I mean, weather related, the Gulf Coast down in Florida, I know a number of you are investing in Florida, there's hurricanes. This has been a fairly active season. I don't know that Florida per se has been hit by any of them. I think it's been more of like Louisiana and Mississippi and maybe Alabama, but or even Texas. But like Hurricane Harvey that just sat over Houston for, I think it was like 2 or maybe even 4 days, and just there was just so much rain. I think that flood is something I would be very, very, very aware of. It'd be one of the first things. You can go to the FEMA maps. You can just log in, or not log in, just Google FEMA, and they've got maps, and you can put in the address, and it'll tell you what zone you're in, and do that as kind of one of your due diligences. Because what happens sometimes, especially if you're buying smaller properties that the owners had for a long time, they may not have a loan on the property to where there's nobody requiring flood insurance. And when you go to borrow money and the bank requires flood insurance, if you've gone past your due diligence, you're going to have to buy that, or potentially lose your deposit or your earnest money. So that water's tough.
What about Darren? Maybe like the biggest claim.
Biggest
like
claim
dollar
I had
amount claim that you've seen.
For like property in general, it was water, but actually it was a malfunctioning of a fire suppression system. The property, it was a university bookstore, and they had a fire suppression system that was poorly designed, and there was a sensor that had been turned off, and the tank was telling the fill that it was empty when in fact it was full. And so you had like a 4-inch water main going full throttle into a tank overflowing into a bookstore. And water and books don't really do real well together. So, but water's fires, obviously we've had numerous fires, and I don't know how, the number one cause of fire is cooking. So, you're not going to be able to, as long as we need food, we're not going to do away with cooking. I will say this to offset that: if you require your tenants to have renter's insurance, you can many times turn to the tenant's insurance for the claim that they caused while they were cooking. I've got one client that has had, I don't remember, I was talking to him the other day. He said, I've had probably 4 or 5 claims this year. I didn't even have to call you once, and it was because all of his tenants had done something, and their insurance had taken care of it. And I think also with that, you tend to get a higher caliber tenant. But, if the market doesn't require it, and you can't get it, then it's tough. But it's a good practice, and it definitely it's worth doing if you're able.
Also, a thing on the stove fires. We had a stove fire in one of my properties, which fortunately it got put out fairly quickly with very little damage. But since then, I put in some of those. It's called Fire Stop. I don't know if you've dealt with those at all.
Those little magnetic look like a Jiffy Pop can that like baking soda or some sort of fire suppression. Yeah, then you just have to vacuum up the fire.
Yeah, I mean, that's fine. I'll vacuum that all day. Yeah. So have you seen anything with those? Because I just put that in all my units just, for the cooking fires.
Be sure to let your insurance company know, because there's likely you can get a discount for doing that. I think it's been a little while since I looked at them. I mean, I've certainly presented it to multiple clients, but they have an expiration date. I don't remember if it's like 5 years or whatever. There is a life expectancy of those things. But I think all it takes is one fire, and they've more than paid for themselves. I mean, in a big way. And the way they work is just like they mount underneath the hood. I think the ones I've seen are magnetic, and they sit there, and if there's enough flame, it opens up and just drops and puts the fire out.
Whoops.
Yeah.
They were.
Darren, I have a quick question. What's a most common insurance clause that people overlook?
A
Or
clause?
not clause, but coverage.
I would say it typically is the coinsurance and limits. I run into this a lot where, especially with people that are doing that have investors and they're trying to get the numbers to work to their budget, and so they'll either work off the purchase price or try and get the limit down to where it's not enough for the to replace the building, because your insurance is based, the limit of insurance is based on what it costs to rebuild the property.
What does co-insurance mean? You mean the copay or?
Yeah, no, that's something that most people don't know, and it's something that most people learn the hard way if you have a claim. So the easy way is this: if you have a property, and let's just say you insured for $500,000 because you think that's the right number, but on the day of the claim, the adjuster determines that the cost to build back the property is actually $1 million. Okay. The coinsurance equation is you take the amount you did insure for, which would be 500, you divide that by the number you should have, which would have been $1 million, and you get a percentage, and that'd be 50%. Well, in a total loss, the most you're going to get is that $500,000, right? But the real problem is in a partial loss, and total losses are fairly rare. Okay, I mean, if your property is in a city that's got protection, the likelihood of it being a total is pretty rare. So if you have a kitchen fire, and let's say it's $35,000, or even it damages the upstairs, and the fire department putting out the fire damages the downstairs, and now you've got 2 or 3 units, so maybe now you're into 50 or 60 or say $100,000, and you've got a coinsurance problem where you're insured to 50%. You essentially are the other half of that. So the insurance company will say, "Oh, here you go. Here's half of your loss. $100,000. Here's your 50,000, and you're on the hook for the other 50." So definitely something to be aware of.
Does anybody else have any questions?
Yeah, hey Ryan, Troy here. I have actually another question for Darren. So if I recall earlier, Darren, you gave us a pretty good pro tip when you're walking through the apartments on your due diligence walkthrough, and you're talking about checking the plumbing systems, and you say turn on, all the faucets in the tub and shower. And I just want to make sure that I heard you correctly. So really, when you do that, we're looking for anywhere that we would see like a leak or overflow of water, and then we could just dive in and start asking the questions regarding that area. Is that correct?
Yeah, what I took it to mean is basically, yeah, you're testing the plumbing system. So you turn it all on, and then if you do have some leaks, get a plumber to drill in and find out more what it's going to take to, what's the problem.
Yeah, so turn it on all at the same time though.
That's pretty much what my plumber said. If I don't know how that would go if you had hundreds of units, but I think if a smaller building, if you turn it all on at the same time, I mean, even if they wanted you to pay for some of the water, I mean, that's pretty cheap due diligence, pretty cheap insurance, to make sure you don't have a bigger problem.
And it would actually maybe even show you any backups, right? So
Yeah.
like your water's backing up, really, that's where you could really see
Yeah.
it. So, then you could look in and scope the lines and things like that. So.
Yeah, or just you have like water coming out of the wall somewhere, like you have a leak in some drain or something, or in a line. So I thought it was pretty powerful, and with all the money I've spent on plumbing, it seemed like something I wish I would have done earlier.
Yeah, great tip. That's it. Thanks.
Anybody else?
Hi, this is Larry. Just maybe a comment, not so much a question, but I think one of the things that stands out is be very wary of cutting corners, you know, whether it's trying to cut back on your insurable values or how much money you're going to keep for renovations or, you know, the emergency repairs. Keep yourself financially strong. And you know, as you're going in and buying it, don't pinch yourself down so tight that you run yourself into a problem. Plan on keeping some extra money. Because something's going to come up and bite you.
Awesome. Thanks, Larry. Okay. If nobody has anything else, I guess we'll do one more breakout room. Before we do that, guys, I just posted in the chat the link to our Facebook group. If you're not in there yet, we've got about 5,800 members and growing pretty quickly. Multifamily Masters is the fastest meetup group in the world. Worldwide. So definitely join that Facebook group. Tons of networking, opportunities, connections, everything. Check it out if you're not in there. So.
How long is the second breakout group time for?
Well, we scheduled the session till 7:30. So if we'll just go till everybody's done talking to each other.
Okay, I will set that up. Second.
And Darren, I guess before we do that, if you want to drop your information so people can get quotes from you and get in touch with you, go ahead and do that.
Okay.
One thing I wanted to throw in there about renter's insurance, at least in Oregon, I think all of Oregon, you can require renter's insurance. So it's not something that renters have to, you know, voluntarily get. You can require for them to hold renter's insurance. So, and we do that, and it's super cheap. It's like $20 a year for them or something. So certainly worth it.
That can also be an income stream. You can have them either buy it from you or buy their own, but either way, require it.
Yeah, there are multiple ways to do that, but yeah, you're right.
All right, cool. Well, with that, I'm gonna open the breakout rooms. I'll see you guys there.